All right, guys, podcasting for me started about 10 years ago when I went on the Joe Rogan Experience for the first time. As a buddy and a former fighter in the UFC, Joe said, hey man, you should start a podcast. And I know he tells that to a lot of people, but I had to grapple with that for a while, and I decided, fuck it, let's do it. So I started podcasting. I've been doing it for about 8 years, and I have over 400 podcasts. As it so happens, I lost my YouTube password, and it's been over a year since I posted a video there. We decided to start a new one. I got a new video team. I got a few cameras, all the things. And it just so happens that the first episode on the brand new YouTube channel was that with Brian Johnson, the Liver King. And there's been a lot of talk there, so I'm here to address some things. The podcast with the Liver King was recorded Friday, June 20th. Friday, June 20th. This was before all the talk about Rogan, before going to jail, before any of these things happened. And it took about a week to get everything done. It took about a week to get it all ready to launch. And I even asked, like, hey, team, do you guys want me to release this to his team, considering everything that happened? And they thought it'd be a good idea to get his voice out and to have him be heard, which is in part why I wanted to have him on the podcast to begin with. We had to change from my podcast arena in here and go out to the living room. That's why you can hear birds in the background. We've got parakeets and cockatiels. I didn't think he was going to eat one of the parakeets, but I did appreciate that comment. Some of the comments are funny. Most are shit, but some are funny. We moved it out there to the living room because he brought his amazing wife, Barbara, and his two sons, Stryker and Rad. And I really appreciate the fact that he brought his family. His family was awesome, grounded, beautiful, loving. Didn't see anything, any red flags or anything that would throw me off there. And the main goal of my podcast was to get Brian to tell the story the way he wanted Netflix to tell the story. Like, give me your life story, or as much of it as you want to share, and tell me the things that Netflix left out of the documentary. Like, let's make this the place where it's unedited. You can say everything you want. And, as I mentioned in the podcast, I'm a fan of pro wrestling. I've been around pro wrestlers. I've got friends that have a shtick or a persona. JP Sears comes to mind. He's comedian JP Sears on stage. And he's grounded, level-headed, normal JP. And sometimes those things mix up. I just had Troy Casey on the podcast, the certified health nut, who's an old friend. And on the podcast, he talked about the birth of the certified health nut when he was in the Amazon and how this persona came through. And, you might see him on Instagram drinking urine and being wild and crazy. And that's one side of Troy. And then there's this totally other side of Troy. So when we were podcasting, I didn't think anything of it when we were looping on certain things. I figured, like, maybe he's in the persona right now. Maybe I'm talking to Liver King and not Brian Johnson. I didn't think anything of it. As far as I could tell, he seemed clear, but he was emotionally charged. That became evident as a lot of the negativity came out around, just his experience with Netflix and the people that he felt wronged him. That was clear as night and day. He brings up Rogan on the podcast and wants to give him a gift. The gift so happens to be a Terran tactical handgun. Now, I'm a handgun guy. I love shooting. Rogan's a shooting guy, and so is the Liver King. So again, no red flags. I've had a lot of people ask me on the podcast more than I'd like to admit, like, give me the end to Rogan. I don't know if they think I'm the gatekeeper, but maybe because of the fact that I've been on a show a couple times, people do ask, and that happens. So that wasn't a red flag either. Once we recorded all this, it became increasingly odd seeing how much of his posts, not only daily posts, but how much of his posts had to do with Joe Rogan. It was clear something was off. It was clear that he needed help. And, I, to this day, want to be there for him. I have resources. I've seen a lot of people go through what you might call a manic phase. Some of those close friends of mine have made their way back. They've grounded. And to see that come full circle is one of the most beautiful things you can see. When someone that close to you starts to lose themselves and comes back to themselves, it's the greatest comeback story of all time. Conversely, I've seen people not make it back. I've seen people that go off the rails that don't really get grounded. They stay in the negative. They stay looping on who wronged them or whoever is the problem. And I don't think any of us want to see that. I know Barbara, I know his kids don't want to see that. I know Brian doesn't want to see that. So when I posted this podcast, I knew there was going to be a shitstorm. I knew a lot of people were going to be running their mouths because people were running their mouths all week. Some comments were horrific. People comparing him to Chris Benoit. Again, pro wrestling fan, that's the fucking worst thing you could ever say to a father. And Chris Benoit did happen, and people are concerned. But there was a lot of fucked up comments and some funny. But I knew the second that this posted that's what I was bringing on. So when people are talking about me trying to capitalize off a guy who just went to jail, like I picked him up from prison and fucking we got on the podcast. That's just not the case. I've been in talks with Brian since January about coming on, before the documentary release. And I've been a fan of Ancestral Supplements. I've been a fan of his work for a long time. You can hear that in the podcast, that I appreciate Brian for who he is and the work that he's done. I really wanted to know Brian Johnson in the podcast. I want Brian to know Brian Johnson. I want the world to know Brian Johnson. I think we've got a lot of Liver King. Liver King's awesome, right? But I want to know who Brian Johnson is. And, I didn't really see that. As I talked about in the intro, something that kept coming up for me was Paul Selig. The work of Paul Selig is such an important piece to all this, because as he speaks to forgiveness, he leaves us with a couple of really important quotes. One, anything you damn, damns you right back. That's super important if we have anybody that's fucking wronged us, right? Anything you damn, damns you right back. Anyone I hold in the dark, there's a part of me that must remain in the cave holding them there. So forgiveness is less about me letting someone off the hook, and it's more about me letting myself let go, release, and move forward. And I think that's a very critical piece here on all fronts. For the people that get a kick out of shitting on somebody while they're down, for myself with the people talking shit about me, I got to forgive that. I can't live with. I'm not going to hold that weight. I'm just not going to hold it. Definitely for Brian, right? For Derek, for Joe, for anybody that was a part of the Liver King story. Like, let it go. Let's go on. Let's focus on what's good and true. Let's really double down on family time. Let's double down on the tenets, the things that we know that are good for us, and live in that space and walk that walk. There's a quote from Dr. Seuss that I really appreciate as well, and that is, be who you are and say what you want. Something to the effect of that. I'm going to fuck this up. Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. I love this. And to the extent in which we can forgive, married with Dr. Seuss's quote there, I think those are core tenets. You could add them to the ancestral tenets if you want, but I think they're critical pieces here in order for us to move on. The world's fucked up. We're going to experience trauma. We're going to experience loss. We're not always going to have life go our way. And if we can hold those tenets, if we can remember to forgive for the sake of ourselves, if we can remember to be ourselves for the sake of ourselves, then I think we got a leg up on everyone else out there. Lastly, I just want to reiterate, I have resources, Brian. I have had a lot of people go through shit like this, and I would love to be of service to you. I also would love to do the podcast I wanted to do in the first place. So if you're into it, 6 months from now, a year from now, whenever, I want to come down to LK Ranch and let's run this the way that I wanted to run this. All right, mad love to you all. Be good.